is Zennial Gamer. We started off facing Seratonina, and the first fight I did was against an MST. I had to pause it because this fight is just over way too quick. So against the MST, I used my Mirene Teon Lucian, and then the Shayna is all that's left. The Shayna proc right there was actually pretty clutch, but we do get the stun on the Shayna, and then we just clean up from here. Now, guys, I apologize, most of my stats are not shown in these videos, but I want you guys all to know that there is a link to our Discord server in the video description below, and all of the stats of all of my monsters are public. You can see any of the stats that you'd like. So, for this second fight, we had another MST, and we went with the Elusia Kinky Molly. Now, I'll tell you guys, this is probably not a comp that I would have used if we were, I don't want to say in a ranked siege, but that's basically what it was. Like, the siege tournament, it's not exactly practice, but it's not something that if you're not in the real tournament, right? There's no major prizes. There's, it's not as big of a deal if you lose. I obviously always want to win, but I also sometimes just need to test counters and test comps. And so I did kind of use the Siege tournament as an opportunity to test some of these comps. Now you'll see that this first one actually worked really well. I wound up using this exact same comp twice. I do have two Mollies. The second one does not have nearly as good of runes. I don't normally use either of them. This might have been the first time I had used Molly in months. However, I do have one Molly that's well runed for arena defense. I don't actually remember if she's on arena defense at the moment, but she's well runed for the chance to be on arena defense. So, basic concept of this team, obviously, is the Elusia is going to give me control, going to give me sustain, and also give me attribute advantage over the Shayna, which can be really important. The Molly gives me some added sustain and cleanse, and we're just trying to keep the Kinky alive until he's able to kill something. While we're controlling with the Elusia. This was a really long fight, so I'm going to speed the playback up here a little bit. I want you guys to be able to see the actual gameplay and what I did for these teams. Basically, we targeted the Shayna in this case. I know a lot of people will target the Martina first, but since Shayna is the primary threat, it also depends, honestly, it really depends on what kind of comp you're bringing in. So I brought in a heavy sustain comp. Once that Shayna is gone, the only risk for me is basically well, there really is no risk for me. Honestly, once that Shayna's gone on this particular comp, there is no risk, and that's basically what it was. So, as you can see from this point, this first one worked really, really well. It worked so well, I decided to do it again. However, I did not have a second Elusia, so I decided let's try out the Ajir with his brand new buff and see how this works. Doesn't work as well, guys. Doesn't work as well. He's not tanky enough. Now you can see I actually got lucky-ish at the start right there. He didn't get stripped. Well, he wasn't gonna get stripped there, but he didn't get anything because he had Will Rune. So I guess I didn't really get lucky because he wasn't the target of the Shayna. But you'll see that things start to turn really quick because the max resistance Molly did get, and obviously Shayna's got accuracy on her passive, so because the max resistance Molly, the resistance didn't really matter all that much here, the Molly dropped quick. Now fortunately I was able to kill the Shayna, but it became a little bit iffy because I didn't have that secondary sustain of the Elusia. So in the end, this one actually did work out, but it really could have gone the other way. It was probably not a good comp. Honestly, the Ajir is in rage runes too. He wasn't exactly in great runes. And again, as I said, I kind of treated the tournament as a way to test some of these counters that I wouldn't necessarily bring in when we're like, oh man, we just really need this win, right? So this was a good chance for me to test some new counters against an MST. Now, after that fight, we had a bunch of Molong Woosa Pernas. I have found the Tiana Poseidon and Galleon counter to be pretty good against this team. I mean, there is the risk. If you get over-resisted, you basically need the same monster to resist you twice. Things can start to get kind of ugly, but generally speaking, like you can look right here, this didn't go perfectly for me, and it was still relatively safe because you've got the silence from the Poseidon. And generally speaking, this team is a pretty effective counter against the Molong Woosa Perna. There is a little bit of a risk when you're bringing this team in, like I said, of, if the Woosa double resists, that's basically what it is. If the Woosa resists both the Galleon and the Poseidon, you could be in trouble. And honestly, even if the Woosa just resists the Poseidon, it's usually tanky enough to live through a Poseidon hit. If it gets that immunity up, it messes up the Tiana guaranteed crit. And then it becomes a little bit of a more YOLO situation. But even then, if you've got the Molong dead at that point, which you should, unless the Molong also double resists, you can usually win that in a 3v2 situation. They have a little bit of sustain, but you have way more damage output. Now from there we have another Molong team. This one is going to be Molong, Molly, Savannah. So anytime there's a Savannah, I really like to use Fang. I think in this case I actually did wind up using a Leo, but the Leo is not necessary. If you just have defense scaling monsters, the Savannah can't defense break you. So in this case we actually did use the Leo. We went with the Fang leader skill, and at this point the Savannah is not going to be able to do that much for me. I think I just went with the Leo here because I wanted some extra wind damage that could deal with the Molong. The Perna is obviously providing me that additional sustain, but also the Perna is my Molong tank. So even if the Molong procs and manages to kill the Perna on the proc, the Perna then is going to revive for me and then still provide me with that sustain, and then we get the defense breaks from the Fang into the Molong, and then the Leo gives me that added extra damage. My Fang does a crap ton of damage already, but with the Molly on the field, that extra damage is really helpful. I think you could see right there, it was like 7k a hit. So he does a lot of damage already, but with the Molly on the field, it really is helpful to have that extra wind damage. And then the Leo is also a little bit of dirt protection for me there, in that the Fang will actually gain attack bar when he's hit, and then the Savannah speed buff is not going to allow the opponent to lap me, and the Leo is going to nerf the Savannah speed scaling damage. So since the Fang is fully targeting the Perna and the Molly is not going to do any kind of major damage, the Leo basically takes control of all of Savannah's stuff and prevents Savannah from doing much there as well, and we were able to get the win. Okay, for the next comp, we cheated, guys. We used an LD5. This is one of my most effective comps overall, which is the Theamars, Julienne, and Lulu. I've actually since changed the Lulu for Woosa, which makes the team less good, not gonna lie. Now the thing is, the reason I switched the Lulu is because I needed Lulu for a different comp, and the Woosa does not provide nearly as much support in this case, but the team still is extremely strong. As long as you can drive the attacks into the Julienne, the Theamars has Element King, he's gonna do a crap ton of damage. If I remember correctly, letting that Savannah not get dismounted there was a huge mistake for me on this particular fight. I should have dismounted the Savannah. I think I thought I was safe, and you can see right here, had I not gotten the Lulu proc, this could have been a very, very different fight. So the Lulu was able to get the immunity up on the Theamars, and then we get the Savannah dismounted. And from here, we're good. But this fight could have gone really badly for me, simply because I chose to focus on the Woosa. And then you see right here, we did lose our Theamars. Had I just dismounted the Savannah earlier and left the Woosa alone, we never would have had an issue. But in the end, LD5 is OP. This team's just a cheat code. So if you do happen to have a Julienne, Theamars, Julienne, and Lulu, absolutely insanely good. You could also run a Riley in place of the Lulu. The Lulu's cleansing really helps here a lot, and then the double water also helps a lot because it allows you to manipulate element, so that a lot of times you can make sure that the damage is going into the Julienne, which is what you really want. Okay, next up we've got another Molong Woosa Savannah. For this one, we went with Fang Tyrannus, which is a very common combination for me, but I brought the Iris here instead of the Velajul, thinking that the Iris would give me some strips on the Woosa. This was pretty YOLO. In retrospect, I'm not so sure the Iris was a great idea here. Had I just brought in the Velajul, I think my concern here was that we would see basically a Molong Woosa snipe into the Velajul, but that's almost what happened to the Iris anyway. So I don't know that the Iris was actually a big upgrade for me. Now the team worked, as you can see, we didn't actually lose, but that got really close with that Iris sitting there at 1 HP. If we wound up having to do a revive instead of a Soul Protect, or if the Molong had actually gone ahead and stripped the Soul Protect, we probably would have lost that one. I don't know if the Velajul would have been safer or not than the Iris in this situation. I may probably have just been better off not bringing in that particular comp overall. I needed something that could take all of that fire damage. So even something like an Arnold right there, if I had an Arnold, which I actually do, I still have a double Nemesis Will Arnold built from the old days. So something like the Arnold right there probably would have been safer because he would have potentially cut. All right, this next comp was stupid, guys. So we have a Kamoon Odin Bastet, and I didn't realize that Odin could attack anything. This was after his buff, but I hadn't faced him yet, I hadn't actually used him yet, and I just didn't realize that Odin would be able to attack anything. So against KBO in the past, what I always used was the Mimir, Annabelle, and Triana. And the way this team would actually work is Odin would be forced to attack the Triana because of element. Odin would be forced to attack the Annabelle because of element. So the Triana would prevent the Annabelle from dying, and then I've got double heal from the Annabelle and the Triana. I've got defense breaks from the Annabelle, and then Mimir can just do all the damage in turn cycle. So I was like, oh, cool. You know, we've got a KBO, and Mimir's been recently buffed. Now, my runes on the Mimir were really bad here. I haven't upgraded his runes since the buff, and they're like 2 years old. But I was like, oh, cool. We're good, right? I forgot that the Odin could just target the Triana. So since the Commune went first and the Commune hit the Triana, Triana was at lowest health and the Odin was able to target the Triana. So we come back in a second time. This time we bring a Nana along with a Gani and a Rika. Basic concept here is use the Rika for lots of damage. Obviously use the Nana for whatever. We're gonna reset the Odin so that he doesn't get his revive, and then we're just going to get the Rika damage out. Again, this was another really bad comp. You can see because the Odin basically just one-shot the Rika at the start. I actually got lucky on the spare stun right there too. We got the excuse me. We got all the dots out here, but here's the there's a couple of major issues with this. First of all, the Rika just getting absolutely wrecked right there didn't help me. Second, the Commune shield is going to soak up a lot of damage, but third and maybe biggest, this doesn't even come into play as I lose this match. But major issue here is that if a monster dies to the dots, then the Nana is not going to get the orb anyway. So in this case, we got out the Ventilate on the Rika, but we didn't have enough damage to finish it off from this point. We were just in trouble. We almost were able to kill that Bastet, and then the rune quality on the Commune just took out the Gani, who my Gani is in really bad runes, by the way. But this was a flawed comp all around. This probably would not have worked without Triana either. This was just simply a bad idea. It was just a bad comp. Don't try this at home. So that was it, guys. Went 8-2 overall in this siege. I had 3 kind of YOLO comps. The second Molly with the Ajir going into the MST, also pretty YOLO. That one did win. Both of the comps against the Commune Bastet, Odin lost. The Rika comp maybe could have won. That one, honestly, maybe could have won if things went a little bit differently. The Mimir comp had no chance to win. That was me just not realizing that Odin could attack wherever he wanted to attack. But overall, we finished the siege with a record of 8-2. And as always, guys, I appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time.